I greet you all. I want to believe that we are okay. I want us to go through JSP and we see how to go about dealing with JSP for internet or web-based applications. To start with, when we talk about JSP, we are talking about the Java server page. That means that this page is going to be hosted on a web server, whether it is any kind of server, but the bottom line is that these kind of pages are hosted on a given server. They are also processed on a server. These kind of pages are kind of dynamic. When I say dynamic, it means they allow for processing, they allow for content change, they allow for content inclusion. You can capture information from users and have it processed on this page, and you are able to see results of the same depending on the kind of code that you have written. The fact that they are referred to as Java server pages simply means that we have the Java programming language included in these pages. Now you realize that for JSP, the Java code is actually included in the HTML code. Remember that HTML is a language we use to build web pages. So you have your web page in your HTML, but in there you include, since we know that HTML will make your pages static, we want to have a little bit of dynamism, a little bit of logic in our web pages. And so we bring in the Java language to bring the logic and the control component in these pages. You realize that whatever we can do in JSP, we can also actually do in servlets. So when we talk about servlets, you realize that we're almost doing the same thing in different ways. JSP is a server-side scripting language. Like I said earlier, this page is going to be processed on the web server and not on the client machine, as is for other scripting languages. And of course, because it's a Java, a JSP page, it will have the JSP extension to have your browser be able to run it accordingly. This JSP has a 3-tier architecture. And so you see that there are different components that are required for you to work with this. You have, well, your client machine where you are working. You have the internet. You have the web server. Now, when I talk about this web server, I'm bundling it up with your database because this server is ideally on a particular database. And so you have your requests coming from the client machine, whichever client machine, it may be a phone, it may be a laptop, it may be a desktop. The bottom line is a client machine sending requests through an internet browser. And that means you need any kind of browser that you are open to, or that's available to you. You send these requests, they will go through the internet to the web server. And if whatever is needed is from this database, this will be brought back in HTML format and will be displayed to you. If it doesn't need any kind of picking, it will be displayed for you if there is no processing required. And so we see the JSP servlet engine being really, really instrumental in this kind of way. And so when we're talking about processing of Java pages, we see them being translated into a class file, and then we see the compilation, and then we see the executable file, and later on, we are able to see the output. And so I want you to read more about these phases, the translation, the compilation, initialization, and execution, and of course the destruction. That's when we break the whole cycle. Read about this but we shall talk about it in another forum. There are different elements that we shall find that will allow us to put our Java code in the HTML code. Now we know that HTML works with tags. You have different tags for different things, for paragraph, a tag for tables, for forms, all for listings, all those different tags. All those different tags you have. And so it's quite the same thing when we are talking about inserting our Java code in HTML. We are going to make use of elements. These elements all have a particular syntax that they dictate to enable us have no syntax or semantics errors in our code. Now, the beauty about this is because the fact that you have already done web development, you know HTML, and you have already done Java in object-oriented programming. Now you're just trying to merge these two languages and coming up with a web-based application. So the components of Java will not change, the components of HTML will not change. The only difference now that we are making is how to merge the two so that we have the effect we want on the web or on the internet. When we talk about scripting elements in JSP, these scripting elements have these given tags, which will look like the tag for HTML, but then they will include the percentage sign. And so when you open, you must close, and that's why I'm consistently talking about tags in plural to mean there is an opening and closing tag. That's a pair. If we leave out any of them, then we risk having a syntax error. And this is an example. Realize this is a basic HTML page. We have our heading, and under the head tag, we have the title of the page, what we'll see in our tab when we run this. And then in the body here, we are seeing our bit of the JSP tag. So just this part is our JSP tag. So we see that becoming very instrumental, very necessary when we are running our code. Again, there are majorly 5 elements. You may be able to find others, but we'll talk about these major 5. The comment element, the directive, the declaration, the scriptlet, and the expression. When we talk about the comments, we are trying to include information in our code, which possibly is for you, the developer, or whoever is going to read your code to understand what this is about, and maybe later understand what it was about. But you realize that these comments have no effect on the processing of your code if you have specified them right. And so that means the comments do not change your code. That means they are actually ignored when the processing is being done of your code or your script. And then we have the directives, which allow us to include certain pages, certain files into our code or into our script. We have the declaration. In your declaration, you may want to include a certain variable in your code. You may want to declare a certain method or function in your code. And so for you to have this possible, you want a declaration element. And so this is just showing us a syntax and a simple example of what this can be or what this can look like. And we shall see it as we are actually writing the code. Then we also have the scriptlet tag, which allows you to write your Java statements within the JSP page. And this will enable to implement functionality of the JSP services. We shall also see this in more detail as we get to do our working. So you see more of our processing, more of our logic design in our scriptlet tag, which we earlier referred to as the JSP tag. So that means if I don't see the JSP tag, it is basically HTML. If the JSP tag or the scriptlet tag is included, then we simply know that at that point, there is Java code inserted. But we also have the expression element. In our expression element, you may have an expression like you're getting some summation, you are outputting a certain statement, and so on. And possibly you don't want to write a generic statement where possibly in this generic statement, you're writing an output per se, maybe an output statement of Java. So you may just have your basic expression, which will mimic the mannerism of a Java code. So I want to also take us to, sorry, I'm so sorry about this. I want to take us to, I want to take us to the actual code now, so that we try to write a JSP script and maybe run it. We're going to write a JSP script and run it, and then we shall see what comes of it. Now, to start with, I'm assuming you have already done, I'm assuming that you have already done your installation of NetBeans. But as you were installing NetBeans, I'm sure that you chose the option of Java EE and not Java SE, so that we are able to do the web component, or to have the web component included in the NetBeans IDE. I'm also assuming that you also selected the Tomcat, Apache Tomcat server, so that we are able to use the web-based Tomcat server as we are running our scripts. All right, so here we are with our NetBeans app. Of course, we shall simply go to the file. We want to create a project. This time we are not creating a basic Java project. It's a Java web project, and we specify the kind of project. It's a web application. When we move to the next phase, we can choose a name for our project. I can choose to call this BSIT3 as the name of my project. I can maintain the location so that it's in the default folder of NetBeans projects, that's in my document folder. And I can also decide that the project itself will actually be in a folder called BSIT3, following the name of the project. And so right here, you can choose the server. I'm choosing Apache Tomcat server, and I'm leaving the path as it is, so that we are able to locate it when we are executing. Notice that at this phase, this page, I'm not going to select anything. We shall look at those bits a little bit later. For now, we are not selecting any of that, and we get to the finish point. Now, when we do that, realize that automatically you have an HTML file created for you. If we just click on the run button to see what will happen, you realize that now any browser that is default on your machine will start up, and that is why we're seeing Explorer has started up, and we can see that this page has run. This is a basic HTML page. Our interest is not to have this HTML page. Our interest is actually to have a JSP page. And so we shall go to our project. Realize our project is BSIT3. So I'll just expand that project and go under the web pages where all my pages will be that I'm going to create. Simply right click on web pages and under new, choose JSP, not servlet, not Java class, but JSP, because we are coming up with a JSP script or file. We can choose to give this a name. I'm going to call it, maybe I'll just call it first file, or maybe first page. So I'm just calling it first page. I'm leaving it under this project as the default location, and it will be under web pages as a location. I don't really want to change that, and anyway, there is no other option. I'll leave it to be a standard file so that I get it in its standard form, and then we can modify it. Once that is done, we can click OK, and here we are now. Now, with this, our file, let me just expand this a little. Okay, so with this file, we can do what we want to do with it. Let me just close this HTML file. What makes us know that this is a JSP file? It has the .jsp extension, which we talked about when we were looking at the intro to the class. And so if I run this, for now, just right click within space and run the file. If we choose to run this, realize that again, your default browser will open, and so our JSP file has opened. Why is it looking like this? We realize that in our HTML code, the title is JSP page. That's why on the tab we're seeing JSP page. In the body, we just have a heading, hello world. How do I know it's a heading? Because of the heading tag for HTML. We are going to change this heading and maybe say BSIT practical. So if we call that BSIT practical, I may also want to just change this heading and say today. With that, if now I run my code, realize we are not yet even putting any JSP or Java code in there. So I'm just playing with the HTML for now. So what do we want to do? Let's start with the comment tag. If we want to put comments, we remember we talked about the comment, the comment element. And we said our comment element to start with, we want to have our scriptlet tags. Our scriptlet tags help us to specify the fact that now we are going to put something which is Java. If these tags are not there, then it is not Java. What will make this a comment will actually be the dashes. And this dash, if I put a starting, there must be a closing point as well. And so I can go ahead and put my comment in there. Okay, I can go ahead and put my comment in there. Now, again, you want to look at this, realize that by just putting that space, it was actually interpreting this as a continuation, and getting rid of this space gets me back to normal. So you want to be keen about syntax issues when you are writing your code. So there we are, we have our comment. realize this is just funny text. But remember, we said our comments should not affect the operation of our file. So now just put a Java code or Java code, and I still have my script running fine as before. I don't see any funny characters on the page. Why? When the file or the script is being processed, the comment is ignored. So again, apart from that, I could want now to display something now in my body. After the heading, I could maybe want to say, okay, we have started the actual scripting. If I want to do that, one could say, why don't we just write our HTML? We have started scripting. If we just write that there and run, it's HTML, really. We have just started scripting, it's HTML. But if I want to make this Java, then it means I'm going to need to have my tags. So I'm bringing my scriptlet tags, and it's in between here that I want to actually put my code. So if I put my statement here, I want to know what kind of statement it is that I want to put. If I choose that I just put it as an output statement, then I'll say out.print. Realize now I'm not using system. Out.print. We have that. Of course, you want to terminate this statement. Now in there, because we don't want this to be interpreted, I'm putting it inside those quotes. Now I have just written an output Java statement because this is a typical output Java statement. What is actually helping my processor to know that this is actually Java is because I've put the scriptlet tags. And so now when I run my file, I should be able to see this output on my screen. Now, there is something interesting. If I simply have this repeated, even if I have put the ln, and possibly my interest is that I have these on different lines, you realize that as it is processed, we still see these on the same line. Now we are going to make use of HTML to have this separated. So I'm going to use the paragraph tag. And I love to close my tags. I love to close my tags so that I don't have them later spilling over into the other lines of code. So we can see that now because I've made this a paragraph tag, and inside the paragraph tag I've put my Java code, I am able to see this separated on different lines. But again, one could say, why are we even struggling with all this? Why exactly are we struggling with all this? Instead of this output statement, why don't we make it an expression? And so now, if I choose to make this an expression, realize that now I'm removing the method. I'm removing the output method. I'm just putting my equal sign, because we said with our expressions, we have our equal sign and then whatever statement we want to run. So now here we are. Here we are. And I've put now my equal sign here, and I've put the statement. If we choose to execute this, we should be good to go. Now, the beauty about programming is that there are many ways to kill a rat. So someone who has used an output statement is here. You have used an output method to display this. Another person has used an expression element to output this. But again, someone may have just used HTML. Okay, let us get that back. Let us get the HTML back. Let us get the HTML back. Someone may just have used the HTML. Maybe it's also paragraph, so that we have that looking different. So realize that we are doing the same thing in different ways. We're just outputting a phrase. We have started scripting, and we have seen this run in different ways. You can see that the first line is a result of a basic HTML script or line. The second is a result of an output method, an output Java method, which is a Java scriptlet element within HTML. The last one is an output of an expression statement, which expression statement is also Java component within HTML. So one can do all that. Again, you realize that because of this expression ability, we can do our additions and we should be good to go with that. For instance, if I want to know the total fees, I want to know addition of animals on a farm and things like just basic computation, let us just change this a little, or maybe let us just write another file. Let's create another JSP file. And now I'm going to call this adding. So if I have called this adding, I possibly don't want the title to be just JSP page addition. And possibly the heading here is going to be sum of animals. Sum of animals. What do I want in this body? Possibly I could start by just putting my tags, my paragraph tags, so that I have things on different lines. So here, I'm going to just have this. I will remove them if I don't need them anymore. All right, so don't worry about the indentation. The white space is ignored. I'm just doing indentation for ease of reading of my script. So to start with there, I'm just going to have an output expression. Maybe I want to capture what there is on the farm for different kinds of animals, for different kinds of types of animals that are there. So I could decide in there to start my JavaScript or Java code. And so with my Java code here, I'm stating something that's interesting. I'm saying now we have sheep. Maybe the sheep are 30. Okay. The sheep are 30. All right. If the sheep are 30, I want to know, is this an expression? Is it going to be in an output statement? If I want it to be an expression, that's what I'm going to do. I'll put this in quotes. Okay, so I have my sheep, they're 30. What more do I have on the farm? Maybe I have goats. And maybe my goats are 60. What more do I have? maybe I have cows. So maybe the cows are 50. I'm using expressions, notice. And right here, I'm simply using expression elements to do this. And now, once I have done that, my interest now again is to know the total number of animals. So I could now say, we want to know the total. Now with this total, how am I going to get it computed? Okay, so I can now say, okay, I'm using Java code. I can actually add this up. And so I can say I want the 30 added to the 60, added to the 50. Are we there? And so we can see that because of this kind of expression, I should be able to make this computation and be able to see my result. So we can see that the total number of animals that are on the farm are this. But also one could decide to say, instead of doing this, let us store this in variables. Okay, let us store this in variables. If one chooses that, then we could say, okay, let us have variable storage so that the computation comes from or whatever computation is to be done, the values are picked from a certain memory location. So again, we are going to use our tags because now still that is going to be Java code. So we need our scriptlet tags. So in our scriptlet tags, realize now we have an exclamation mark we are going to declare. So I could say we have sheep, and we say maybe initialize the sheep to 30. We have goats. We could initialize that to 60. We have cows. We could initialize that to 50. And so we have made our declaration statement here. Of course, one can separate this by putting semicolon and have each one declared differently. So we're coming to the same thing. So we have made our declaration. If that is so, then right here, I only need to call this from my memory location. Okay, so I'm combining a statement which is interpreted and one which isn't, so I'm going to need a concatenation symbol right there. And then for the goats, we are getting it there, and we have that there. And for the cows, we are getting it there, and we have it right there after the concatenation sign. If that is true, then one can say, okay, now what will the addition be like? And so now we can say, let the total pick all these values from here. All right. Pick all those values from there, and we are good to go. And when we run this, we should be able to see our content running fine, and we should be able to see our result. If one doesn't want to do that, you could go ahead and still use your output statement. Instead of the expression, one could use an output method in this expression statement. So one could say, instead of that, we have out.println. Okay, and in there, we see this picked, and we have it in here. So we simply take that and put it inside there. And once we do that, of course, we want to terminate that. Same thing here. If we think we don't want to make this an expression, we think we don't want to make them expressions, but we choose to use an output method. We are just changing now the expressions into output methods. Realize with the expression, we don't need the termination. When we were just making a plain expression, we didn't need a termination. But now we are using an output method in our scriptlet, and the termination now becomes important, or rather vital. So you want to be keen about those syntax requirements so that we don't end up struggling with syntax errors. So again, if we run this, we should be good to go. And we have the same kind of expression that we had before. So notice that one can do this. And again, one can actually go ahead and bring in conditional structures and so on. And this should be fine.